Welcome in, everybody. Today should be a fun day. A bit of exploring and ideation, and let's do some Vim distros today. So say hi in chat if you're here. I'm always glad to see all of you hanging out on Thursday nights with me. We got a lot to think about today. My Discord server, we've already started this conversation, so some places to start. I'm looking forward to hearing from some of you today. So hopefully some of you can give me some feedback as we think this stuff through. But yeah, it's going to be fun. So let's talk about it. Let's go, Andres. Yes. We love Lazy Vim. This is the distro I use. Ooh, let's maybe save our eyes here. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Lazy Vim. This is the thing I've been using, but mine is very heavily modified, almost to the point where it feels a little bit strange that I'm even using Lazy Vim, to be honest. And I've spent some time already working through building out like a lazy.invim custom config, right? Like Kickstart Vim. If you guys aren't familiar with the Kickstart project, it's like, okay, I've done that approach as well. But what I'm finding is that there's probably somewhere in between here where there's going to be a handful of users that go, well, yes, please give me this, please give me that, but don't give me everything, which is the approach to Lazy Vim and Astro Vim and Lunar Vim, and I mean, all of these Vims, right? So these are all very NVChad. We've got all these projects, and on their own, they are very impressive, I will say. And so the question today is how much effort should be put in compared to what has already been done? Because if a lot of the work has been done, why would we repeat ourselves? So I don't want to necessarily start from scratch. So we'll do some exploring today and figure out how much of the existing distros can we learn from, and what would be worth our time and effort in making something that's a variation of these things, right? Default, you're a Vim connoisseur. You watch Vim. That's cool. Yeah, no, that's cool. I recommend a distro. Like for people that are new to Vim, pick a distro. There are all of these distros. I think NVChad, I know plenty of YouTubers who talk about NVChad. I know plenty who talk a lot about Lazy Vim. I personally, this is my favorite. And then Kickstart .invim is not a distro. It is just like a starting point. And so they give you this sort of monolithic giant file that's 845 lines as of today, and it will get you a starting point. But there's a long way to go from when you do this. Boilerplate, yeah, sure. Boilerplate is another word for this. So there's a balance. There's a balance for sure. Why don't we get a little bit of rock and roll music playing in the background today, if it's not too distracting. And so basically, I need to define what I want. So what I want, what I don't want. By the way, check this out. I built a new keyboard. It's let's talk about it before I dive in. I built a keyboard. It's made of Lego. This is the what is this called? The Atom. So this was fun to build. It's got a nice and creamy switch. I'm sure I could tell you more specs, but I didn't memorize all of them. But this is what we'll rock today. A little break from the moon lander. It's fun. So what we don't want is key bindings. Decided for us. Options. I also really don't want plugins I didn't ask for. I sort of want opt-in approach rather than opt-out. That is the differentiation here. That is like the huge thing that would make this way different. Every distro I mentioned, all of them, you opt into everything, kitchen sink approach, and then you remove things you don't want. Okay, cool, fine. If you don't want to spend a lot of time on it, fine. If you want a lot of these things decided for you, also fine. And that's basically that's the whole thing of distros. That's why that people do this. I use something called Spacemax for quite a few years, which is an Emacs distro. Incredibly powerful. I am such a fan of community-driven distros, but there's something to this. And there's over 24 people on stream right now. So clearly there's something to this where there's got to be somewhere in the middle. The way that I see it right now is we probably could pull from LazyVim core. We probably could examine the current distros and their patterns. And so yeah, I mean, that's my current thinking. I'm going to probably go over some of my config today. I doubt that we'll be publishing a distro by the end of the live stream today. I don't think that is very likely. And so what I'll probably start doing is come up with a good mental model where we can put some layers over lazy.invim in a way that can help, we can contribute to something, we can support each other in making Neovim easier to use. While, yeah, this is totally alpha, while trying to balance this. So this will be fun. There's a little bit more ideation to go before I sort of dive in and start coding right now. But what would you guys want to see or don't want to see if we were to make a sort of streamlined opt-in version of these distros? I want to hear from you. Well, and so in general, Andres is bringing up a good view. Oh yeah, we got some questions popping in. What is the property view in Obsidian? Yeah, I mean, so this down here, these are projects. So this project is for Josh Godesky, this area of my life. And I believe that this is going to help me with the goal of getting to 8K YouTube subscribers. So that's my current milestone. And there is no strong deadline on this yet. But yeah, this is, I use the para method. So all of my projects live in this projects folder. Cool Obsidian overview. We can see here that we got a local graph in view, calendar view. We got all the links, external, incoming and outgoing, all can be shown here. And this is the file system. Probably won't dig into this right now, but it's pretty personal, but this is how I structure my vaults. All the emojis. So Andres, you're totally right. The good thing about lazy.invim, which is the package manager, is at any time you can overwrite your configuration and you can say this thing enable false, and it will always turn it off. I think that you'd have to play around with the order in which things are called, but of course, whatever custom pieces that a user wants to add to the config, those pieces would be loaded last. And so kind of that final, kind of like CSS, right? That cascading concept, that would absolutely be something. Telescope, yes, of course. We want. Now, the fun part for me on this side of things is I do have some strong opinions about Vim. We've talked about this last stream we talked about this. I don't know, let's go to my drop files. So my layout is very simple, like no line numbers, no Lua line, no indentation. I've gone overly minimalistic. We talked a lot about this last week on stream. Let's go to a different file, like tmux config. Right, and my file name shows up here at the top. And so when I go to see what does this look like, it's very simple. And so I do use noise. So there are definitely a handful of UI elements where we can make a list of like, these are all the plugins we need. I don't need to make that list right now. It's all ingrained in my subconscious. I've spent, years and years and years obsessing over Neovim. So I know a lot about Neovim. I know a lot about the plugin system. So the high level stuff is like, how do we organize it? Some people do it categorically, like this is for UI and this is for LSPs and this is for tree sitter. Some people are language specific, which is what LazyVim does, which I actually really like. Let's just LazyVim, lazy. And so, I want to get JSON support. And so you just say LazyVim plugins extra lang JSON. And I really like this pattern a lot. And I know recently what did Folky do? He did lazy extras. He's got this cool little like UI panel thing, and you can enable and disable things by what is it? It's like I forget. Enable with X, so we can go. Okay, I want harpoon. And you just hit X, and just like that, Harpoon 2 is now enabled for this, distro. Kind of cool. I've used it some. Things like Tailwind, we were just looking at it. The other approach is that you import code. And this import method lets us put any chunk of code we want here. And so part of me is wondering if we can borrow from a lot of what I was talking about here. I have a suspicion that this may not be so crazy, like this LazyVim importing the plugins, doing all the things. I believe it's down here that he does requiring lazy setup. So this is his effort in scaffolding the entire distro. The whole distro goes through requiring lazy setup, and setup sets up all the core modules, which, some of us love, some of us don't. Mostly the key bindings, which I know you can disable. But everything sort of all lives in a different place. And depending on the key bindings, they definitely end up in, individual files under the distro, not exposed to you in order to edit. So there's a lot of sort of overwriting. So Lua line, enable false. Like, let's see, what else do I do that I overwrite? I think glance. Glance one that I use. Let's actually go to .files in Vim. So here's just my Neovim default day-to-day. This is what I do. So we've got, what's going on, James? James is hanging out. He's a buddy of mine. And you're a year in. Okay, Andres, so you've been doing this for a year. Awesome, man. So you definitely know your way around at this point. A year is a pretty good amount of time. Shyam, am I saying that right? Yeah, key bindings is an important piece of this. So like, I love that plugin. I want to go further with that plugin, but more to come. We'll see how that goes. But yes, definitely we want. Here's my thought. I'm really glad you brought that up. This is all you need for LazyVim. I've gotten really good at LazyVim over the years. And this is all you need for it to work. Super simple. And so people can copy and paste this code into their config, or they could go to something like a root file and they could say, I want to import, Josh Medeski dot. Well, we've been joking Medeski Vim. That's a placeholder. I don't think it'll stick to that. Plugins dot, and then what is this? Tmux Navigator, like you could import this and you have everything you need in order to use the Vim Tmux Navigator, right? That's what I am sort of looking forward to. And for some people, there may just be a way that I publish this in a way that you can import this, like Josh Medeski / Medeski Vim, and you import there's a very high chance that something like this could work, where you can have more of my configs. Because at the end of the day, most of these configs aren't that important in how you set them up, but it would be nice if it could be set up in a way that someone who really understands lazy.invim can, be as efficient as possible and do the lazy loading as correctly as you can, so that you're not overreaching or loading something when you're not supposed to load something. So like the little gotchas. And I had a really good time chatting with Typecraft as he sort of put together his Vim to IDE video series. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. It's really awesome. I was working with him while he was making those videos, and I'm like, hey, do this here, do that there. And I was trying my best to give him lazy.invim advice. And so I probably could just make YouTube videos on lazy.invim because, it's kind of tricky and it's a little bit weird. But my other thought is moving in this direction where I can just do stuff that's kind of tricky and let people take it or leave it. So it would be like lazy Vim overrides, right? It's like instead of doing what lazy Vim does, disable all of this stuff and you can be more hands-on with it if you want. But I think the clashing of those two is going to be tricky. So I don't know if I would actually go that approach fully, but I really love how this stuff works. Right? It's like, if you want that feature, you just ask for it. I also could just contribute to lazy Vim. I'm sure that is an approach that would grow the lazy Vim community. So, we're thinking here, we're just talking about what would make sense. And what would make sense for the now 40 people on stream. Holy smokes, people like this topic. So what don't you like about Vim distros? What would you like to see done differently? Tell me, right now, go to the comments and say, Josh, this is my opinion on Vim distros, and this is what I want you to think about. Because I think we're onto something that there's got to be a simpler approach. And the way that I've seen it, mermaid, let's go to mermaid. I feel like there is a chart that I want. Now let's just do TL draw. There's this sort of approach. Oop. We want opinionated. I don't know if I spelled that right. Opinionated, and then what's the opposite? What do we got? Unbiased. Sure. Right? Are we here? All right. And so this is matters included. Let's all right, hold on. Go on. All right, the dogs will stop bothering us. Batteries sold separately. I love it. All right, that's the idea here. So here's sort of the spectrum. And I feel like everything that we know about distros at this point feels like, in my opinion, it sort of feels like these are distros. Like, this is what it seems like to me. So there are opinions, and we are including all the features you might need in order to be effective in Vim. Lovely. I'm not upset at that. That just feels like that's realistically how life is right now. We've got, I'm laughing because I know where this is going. I've been thinking a lot about this, you guys, trust me. The opposite is like this. So let's go the opposite color wheel here. Guess what this is? Everybody can guess. You know what I'm gonna type here? Custom configs. Like, this is like, okay, my config, this happens to be mine and no one else's. I get it. And most people are kind of happy here, right? This feels like it doesn't exist, or if it does, it's really bad distros that nobody ever picked up on, right? Has no stars on GitHub. No one wrote a blog post about it. I'm just going to call this area like, I don't know, like a graveyard for weird, bad code. So the question is today, only because everything I do seems to be in green, is it possible to fill in this space? Is there some weird balance that, let's go back to medium. Is there some new space here that is like, I'm gonna call this like shared ecosystem? Is that a word? Like community driven collection, plugin collections. So it's more, this is kind of what I want, to be honest. I want like a cookbook. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you know, us developers, we love naming things, right? So there's got to be this gap that could be filled where it's not overly biased, but it does include the batteries that you need to make certain feature sets work. That's what I want to fill. That's the gap I want to fill. So again, Astro Vim, Lazy Vim, Lunar Vim, InVChad, all these guys are doing this. The rest of us that don't want all of that all have their own configs. Everybody has their own configs, right? And most of us are doing the same thing anyway. So most of those people aren't Team Distro. That's why they don't have a distro. I've interviewed devs. There are a few on my YouTube channel, and I have a few that are sort of put in the archives for now, haven't been published. But I've talked to quite a few devs and asked them what matters to them, how their workflows work, and a lot of them are in this bottom corner. Like most of them are in this bottom corner. The handful that are Team Distro are mostly Lazy Vim, but even the ones that were Lazy Vim usually end up switching back to custom configs. So there's a lot of copy and paste. There's a lot of people that just say, all right, I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to just copy everything into my repo. But the moment the distro makes an improvement on that feature set, you don't get it because we're not tracking that file and doing git diff patches. And like, I don't think most people are going to do that. In fact, I don't really want to do that unless it was something that was systematic, which Ian, who's on the stream here hanging out with us, suggested something like that, where we could take like a CLI command, or maybe there's a plugin that does this, I don't know, where you could say like, hey, I want to add this thing. I'm thinking even further, I want to patch this thing. Like LSP has some potential improvements. Do you want them? If you want them, you've just imported the whole thing. And if you have some overwrites, or there's a particular area where we want the user to define what they want rather than defining it for them and letting them overwrite it later, there's a balance there. So this is where we're at. So let's play around with it. Let's just see what happens. From what I remember, this import off of LazyVim, so we're just going to sort of explore. I like this whole screenshot here. Let's go ahead and save this. Cookbooks, collections, we have lots of names for these. But like, if you like the way that this thing looks, my Vim setup looks, and you're like, ooh, Josh, I want to do this. I want it to look the way that you made it look. Then we talked about the bottom right. The bottom right is sort of like the gravestone. It's like not gravestone, graveyard of weird, maybe potentially awkward code that might live on the internet somewhere. So why don't we label it? They're not quite distros. They're not quite custom configs. They're like what is a good name? Bad DIY. Okay. No, it's not even DIY. It's like a smorgasbord kind of thing, but like not in a good way. I'm not trying to hate on anybody. I'm not calling any particular person out. We're just trying to sort of think about, you don't have the feature sets you need, but you followed someone else's opinion. Following YouTube videos line to it. Stop doing this. Don't just copy someone's code and get Neovim set up in a custom way where you weren't given everything you needed and you don't understand it because it's someone else's opinion. This is the awkward part. I'm just going to leave it at that. I think that's kind of funny. I know my head's a little bit in the way there, but this is where we're landing. Can I hide this guy? No. All right. Yes, I love this. Great comment. Chat CDN is this kind of thing where it's like, I want this component, boom. I want that component, boom. And I would actually say LazyVim was along those lines already. However, there's a lot of key bindings that most people don't want to use as their defaults. That is kind of the shift there. We'll leave all this open. Chad CNUI. Yeah, love this project. Very cool project. I haven't used it. I'm a Tailwind guy, so I do a lot of custom stuff. But the way that this one works is you sort of bring it in. Let's talk about like remix. Well, let's do Astro. We've been talking about Astro today in the Discord server. So you would add what you want to add, which they actually do use Tailwind under the hood. And then you kind of import what it is you want to import. And then you go, okay, I want an avatar. And so boom, we pull in an avatar. I want breadcrumbs, pull in breadcrumbs. But it's not loading and giving you every single one of these things by default. It's one of those like, you pick and grab what you want. All right, your main points. While learning and occasionally still involve LSP and comp, since I feel like those are generally the most complex and involved. Yeah, you're right. Like that's the idea here, is that those things are the most complicated. And so That's why Lazy Vim and distros are so helpful, is because a lot of effort is put toward those toolings. And so did anything else kind of pop up? Key bindings, opinions? Opinions is hard because you can't go in providing all functionality without opinions. It's like really, really hard, which someone was joking about earlier. But we can be more systematic with, let's be more pick from the buffet rather than shove the whole buffet down my throat and I can pull out what I don't want. Like that's what feels kind of gross about a lot of the big distros. Although most people don't care. Clearly, there's enough people. There's 50 people here. Holy smokes, that care. That maybe there's a different way. Yeah, no, I love lazy extras. As soon as I saw that this was possible, I was like, holy smokes, maybe I can do this myself, or maybe we can build a centralized distro, like a repo where people can contribute and people can pull what they want as an extension of Lazy Vim, possibly. What's up, Full Flex? Hanging out in Norway. Sweet. What time is it in Norway? You're a little bit further than me. Which kind of distro is this going to be? Oh, you guys are going too fast. Very fair question. I think it's going to be the kind where you have sort of the hard stuff hopefully figured out for you, and you can define your own key bindings. I think that's sort of the power here. And I haven't seen that done yet in that easy way. I have a suspicion that the amount of code that the developer deals with, when you do a regular distro, you end up with not a lot of code. When you end up with a big distro, not a big distro, when you end up with a custom config, you end up with a lot of code. And so the question is there a middle ground and can we find it? So let's just start playing around with it. I think that conceptually stuff like this has been explored fairly well. You've worked distros. Yeah, here's a solid point. So how could we make a useful distro that doesn't overreach and that you take what you want and you leave what you don't? That's sort of the promise here that I would want to deliver. Astro community, like AstroVim, is it AstroVim community? Common plugin specs. Ooh, I love this. Yeah, this is definitely up our alley. Yeah. So check this out. Here's the thing. I'm going to pull it in, and then for every subsequent call, I'm going to ask for just the things that I want. Let's see how they phrase this. A collection of plugins contributed by the community for AstroVim and Neovim configuration. These specs help manage the variety of plugins used in AstroVim. Yeah. This is it. This is the kind of stuff that we want. And so someone else can go through the effort of getting it to work. And then if you want to extend customizability, you do this. Yeah, that's exactly right. And then binding, key mapping. Oh, this is cool. I like this. This is one of my thoughts too. So like Copilot, you could overload your key mappings via a table. And so the table can be predefined and there are certain actions available to you via that plugin. And then you set the value that you want, or you can not set those values by defining them as false. So this is very cool. This is definitely what we're looking for. To disable imports, set the enabled option to false. Remember the module name differ from the folder name. Yeah, I know. All right, it's recommended that you use full import path when customizing a plugin. Right. And this is where it gets fun and interesting and kind of weird. What is in this? This is called Astro Community. If you prefer to separate your plugins in the user's plugin folder, consider creating a file named Community Lua. All Lua files in the directory will be automatically loaded. Interesting. Yeah, but see here, like, why would you enable these false? I don't understand. I guess this is like the Astro color scheme feature. I would be very curious to find out what this does. Because technically in here, it never calls setup directly on Astro Community. So this is like basically what I'm looking for. Let's give that a star, very cool. Does Astro have anything other clever things? They have the color scheme one. They got the site. They got the user example. But this is for using the full distro, right? So this would be, yeah, highlights. This is really small for you guys, isn't it? Hey, look at that. Right, so we're overwriting highlights. Here's Duskfox. So that lives under highlights. That's interesting. They talk about it? They don't. And then I'm used to this, plugins, community. So they suggest that this be something that you extend on top of your distro. Here's the distro, and here's everything the community has to provide outside of the core logic that's provided by the distro. Makes sense. Totally makes sense. We can overwrite those things if we wanted to. No, I mean, I get it. I get what this thing is and how it works. Pretty easy to follow. Yep, this thing pulls in the modules, and then the following lines import and execute the specific, what is this called? Plugin specification, I guess. Yeah. So crypto, I get what you're saying. Like, there's a level of abstraction that is valuable and helpful, and there's a level of abstraction that is a little bit frustrating and often tiring to try to reverse. So you prefer where the formatting of the design of the code is not something that you think too much about, right? It's just like, it is what it is. Whatever the raw format is, you just want to stick to. I think this, for the sake of like what it is you want to change, is what is the focus here. So you like Astro's bounce. That's cool. Are you a contributor? Are either of you contributors to AstroVim? Would I find your name if I looked under the repo? Well, and the thing is, Ian makes a point, is that, if we were writing something or we were wanting a change, I want this to be different, then yeah, Lua, like, of course. And lazy.invim, the plugin system, is really powerful. It's really simple for us to override things, even in lazy Vim land. Lazy Vim is like pretty straightforward in how it approaches things. So I totally get that. I think I'm going to play around with AstroVim a little bit. Let's do that. So get started. You just clone it and then run it. I'll show you guys how I do it. you might like a little bit of Vim time. So what I like to do is, this is the config folder, right? So I can, do I have Astro Vim here? No. So Astro in Vim, what should I call this? Maybe I'll just call it a Vim. So we can create a Vim. And I can make let's get this. So that's what I want. If we just call this a Vim, we can load AstroVim separately from everything else. If you guys didn't know this, this is how AstroVim works. Nice. Nothing installed, okay. And so LSP install, TS install, DAP install. We got lazies, we got Astro update. This is interesting. And that just updates itself. This triggers LazyVim updates. Now is Astro community, let's just copy this for now. Do they give us community already? Or do we have to do this ourselves? Ooh, there's a lot actually put in here. Interesting. So Astro is very much, we're gonna categorize this stuff by it's reasonable, like LSP, Mason, Git. I've never seen this though. What is this? Nope. User Astro Git file. I've never seen that. This must be a custom command. But this is the kind of stuff I was talking about that is really nice to see. Even these utility functions getting icons. So these are all defined in AstroVim utils, which I'm gonna guess, is it live here? It does. Interesting. Configs. Mason, notify, auto pairs. There's definitely a lot here. What I do like is when people do stuff like this, where it's like, hey, we've got this switch key register. Now, does Astro live as a... It doesn't live as a... Someone could tell me more. Maybe I just didn't realize how well Astro is designed. Sure, we can update plugins. So how do we look at version 4? They've changed it again. For documentation. So you're saying I should delete everything I just did and do this instead? But it's still gonna remove templates, get connection to set your node up later. Yeah, no, I recognize that. This isn't going to tell me to clone version 4, right? So they're just a little bit ahead of themselves here. Is there a version 4? Yeah. So version 4 is different. In what way? Oh, nice. I like that. How is this system different? They got init, health, init. Is there more than one init? Yeah, there is more than one init. Okay. Excuse me. I'm just getting over a cold. Okay, so then that's that. That's sort of the boring file. This is probably the more interesting one. So we've got replay, checker. This sets up all the core configs. Nope. And then yeah. I mean, this is a lot of engineering, right? There's a lot of engineering power behind these distros already. So again, not boiling the ocean, as some people say. The question is, what have we learned in version 4? I wonder if there's a PR for version 4. The devs are getting lazy. That's funny. Oh, interesting. You can get the nightly versions. This is our way of, oof, big PR, huge PR. What matters right now with this? That's the question. So what I care about right now is the opinions that it brings in. So let's just try this again. I'm fine with version 3. Buffers, debuggers, fine, Git. Ooh, I like the symbols, that's pretty. Packages. Lots of packages, cool. Sessions, you guys can't see some of what I'm showing. Terminal, floating terminal, oh, that's cool. Lazy Git, nice. Python node, so you can specifically say, give me node. That's not gonna work. That's interesting. Can I control C it? Right. Did I lose it? No, it's able to move between splits. Nice. Capital S, sessions. So yeah, this is pretty batteries included, I would say. But it's got a lot of powerful features. I like it. The other one that's really popular right now is NVChad. We can explore my LazyVim plugin setup a little bit. So, oh. Why is it loading all of that? Oh, because I left. I'm done. Okay. There we go. So I have a few custom commands that are important to me. That's it. Elwin's here, everybody. We're just going to build an OS right here from scratch. 10:49 p.m., 7:50 p.m. We're going. I'm going to need some Red Bull. We're just exploring distros right now, man. I think it's exciting to potentially take a lot of what I see out there and simplify it down and offer people the ability to sort of opt into things. So we've been talking about a bit of a balance. Let's go back to our little chart. Everybody mostly uses batteries included and opinionated, and we call these distros. So can we go to sort of a less unbiased approach that still includes a lot of the hard parts and call it something slightly different, maybe? Medeski OS, that's it. Someone go start the trademark paperwork for me. Sesh OS, yes, I love that one. Let's do Sesh OS. I will say though, this approach works fairly well. Part of me really wants to see what is a dumbed down version of lazy Vim, where you kind of take away as many opinions as you can. What does that look like? What does that feel like? How would you extend it? Is my question. So let's try it. Let's just call this, we're gonna have to go back to config. Let's call this like lazy Vim, the good parts, right? Let's call this Medeski Vim. All right, so now we've got our Medeski Vim. I'm gonna go ahead and make what I've been doing is I've been making a NVMRC file. And I've been putting this guy here. So pretty cool. And then when we do NVim, oh, that didn't work. Do I have to export it? I think I do. How did I do this before? We can look at my jam Vim. This is my attempt at doing it myself. And so my init file is fairly straightforward. But following the rules that are needed for Vim to play nice. Like you have to set your leader key first, apparently. Ensuring that I did this utils.lazy. This is just a really simple helper function that just makes sure that Vim is installed, but it's abstracted to a module. And then we require lazy and set up plugins. And I feel like this is the path into what we've been talking about today. Find out where to append more important statements. Perhaps, Ian, we'd have to explore that more, play around with it. I know with me, color scheming is always a bit awkward. You have to sort of force it to be in early on in the config. I think overcomplicating the design of this would be working a little bit backwards, because I think that when we create distros, it's sort of the kitchen sink approach. So there's some sort of magic going on underneath. If we were to take away that magic in favor of some super complex, like AST sort of transforming, like CLI module or something written in a totally different language or something like that, I think that would be a disservice to the point of all of this. So you'd have to balance that approach. Or I'm maybe misunderstanding. But yeah, lazy.invim has prioritizing. You can add priorities. But this is where I've started. I mean, this is what I've been doing. I kind of wanted to go the kickstart in Vim module approach, figure out how much of that could be abstracted and where the opinions are there, but they're not overly opinionated. I was also thinking about, could you centralize key mappings where like your every key mapping you've defined are all in one place? Would be interesting. It would be kind of strange. I don't know if people would like that pattern. It begins to sort of feel like Kickstart at that point where everything's all in one place. But would that serve a better purpose? I don't know. Questions, questions, questions. Lots of questions, not lots of answers today. But this is our very first time having this conversation. For those that are joining right now, welcome. I do a lot of Tmux plugin development here on the platform. I've been writing a lot of Golang the last few weeks and months. And yeah, today we're playing around with what would a Neovim distro look like that is a little bit less opinionated and something us nerds can benefit from without rewriting it all ourselves and without taking in all of the junk that distros tend to take on, like key bindings and the sort of plethora of plugins that often are decided on for you rather than something that you choose yourself. But I've watched a few videos. I kind of want to talk about this. I think this is something under talked about. Oh boy, all the YouTube. Neovim no plugins. I want to talk about this as I get ads. All right, ignore the ads. It is possible to do a lot without plugins. We're not going to do a reaction video here. I'm going to sort of show you that Linux Dabbler, cool guy. I'm going to give a subscribe. I like his videos. 4 months ago, so this is recent. Talks about doing the Vim thing. Where is his? I know it's here. I had it bookmarked somewhere, but I want to glance at his Neovim files. Let's see if it's grown or changed or is different in the time that we've been here. All right, vimrc. Look at this, 67 lines. He is claiming in his video that he is able to be productive with just a handful of mappings. Sorry for the white screen. He has some mappings. He has this many plugins as of right now, so very few. Is this Packer? Maybe? Vimplug, nice, Vimplug. And he is proving through that video and through this conversation that you can be productive without all the code, like without all of this crazy stuff. Very good argument. I personally feel a little bit shameful if we were gonna be real about this. Let's go to my config. Does anyone want to guess how many plugins I have? Any guesses? I don't have Twitch polls set up or anything. I've talked about it before, but anyone want to guess? A dozen, 100, 500? I'll tell you, somewhere in between in those places. Ian says 58. Yeah, it's not 58. I'm currently sitting at 129 plugins. Do I use all of these every day? No, but it's a lot. I will definitely not be the first one to admit that this is modest. It's not. 34 aren't even loaded. But I have some simple ones like Waka Time that like tracks how much time I spend doing things. Twilight.invim, not using. I am using, I don't know why it's loaded. Interesting. Toggle term, not using a lot of. SQLite.lua, not using a lot of. So I can definitely just see that I've gotten pretty aggressive and overreached, and there's a lot of stuff in here. But at the same time, my startup time is like crazy. What is this? How do we do startup? How to measure engine startup. By the way, did you guys see that they changed up Raycast AI recently? That was pretty cool. Should be able to just ask for that. And now we have a startup. So like Vim starts up super quick. It does require all these files, but it does it like stupid fast. So here we go. We're initializing, we're acquiring some basics. This is Lua Vim, or this is Lazy Vim, by the way. So Lazy Vim is what's handling the startup. Lazy core modules, Lazy Vim, some of my own stuff, the extras, and then the plugins. These are all plugins I've mostly defined myself or overwritten. And I think at the end of this, it's like 200 milliseconds. Look at this. This is crazy. So all of this hard work, all of this loading, and it's like a quarter of a second, like maybe a quarter of a second. So it's pretty wild that we're able to be as aggressive as we want with plugins, and Lazy Vim has done a very good job at making it possible to do all of this with very little overhead, especially if you have a powerful computer like I do. Yeah, no, I know the Lazy Invim option. Well, I don't know if anyone noticed, but I don't have a loading screen. No loading screens for me. Oh, and Harpoon's complaining. Yeah, of course it is. Let's just lazy extras, Harpoon. We'll get rid of that. Oh, and it's going to complain. Yeah. Enabled false. What am I doing? Weird. What is this about? Oh, yeah, I know. You don't even want to see my telescope config. So this is my telescope config. I've done a whole bunch of things on top of what they are doing by default. So yeah, there's a lot here. But I bet I could package this up and let people have a better telescope experience if they wanted. But again, not everybody wants every one of these things. So there's almost always something to be said about spinning this up and customizing it yourself and doing what you need yourself. So there's really a push here of like, but why do another distro? That's the challenging part for sure. Harpoon needs to not be loaded. All right. So let's go back to my Medeski Vim. And my dir.env allow. So I kind of want to know, we were already talking about this. General settings. How do we disable? I know how to disable plugins. Someone in chat tell me, how did we disable all built-in? Disable for some format, disable plugin, disable. You can also, by setting it to false. Well, so I'm pretty sure that like the telescope one, we can actually just go. Ooh, lots of things. Lots of things are happening. Okay, calm down. Look at that, 25 milliseconds. That's crazy. Ooh, I like that it shows how many plugins there are loading now. No one's able to tell me how we disable all key maps. We've talked about it in the Discord server, so I know that it's possible. It is not here. Okay. Maybe we won't get this. Recipes. We were talking about a cookbook. There's definitely some stuff here that talks about how you can go ahead and overwrite things the way that you see fit. Adding and disabling plugin key maps, global. Yeah, I'm familiar with all of this. I've spent quite a fair amount of time on this site already, but I don't remember. I think it's in the like GitHub issues or discussions. This isn't going to be easy. Oh, great. Or delete. Disable general key maps. Yeah, defaults key maps false. That is what I wanted. So these are options on LazyVim. To my knowledge, you have to what did we say? We're saying options default. It's not here. Very important distinction. I know because I've played with this before. You actually want to basically, my brain's going to hurt if I can't use my basic bindings. Maybe we'll just overwrite it here. Let's just do that. I think this is valid. Is this an extra thing? Yeah. Or can I just pass it here? Is this valid? Oh boy, too many, not enough. Oh, double ops, all right. I know. So yeah, that is one way of doing it. So this will like buffers. They have switch buffer for some reason. That one's still there. I don't know why. Switch buffer. And for those that are curious, if you ever wanted to look at LazyVim, there's local shared Neovim lazy. So this place in your computer, this is my directory, right? Under local shared in Vim lazy, this is all of the projects, like all of the plugins, source code live here. So if you're like me and you use Sesh, you can do things like Sesh. We can do LazyVim. So LazyVim is its own thing. And so we have the opportunity now to explore this if we wanted. I'm kind of curious why switch buffer is still here. It's a telescope thing. Okay. But I've probably overwritten this somehow. So that's that. Go ahead and close some of this. I saw a question. This guy here is called Raycast. It's a Mac OS app, and they offer a paid feature called Raycast AI, which is basically ChatGPT in a global box. So you can set a global hotkey, and this box pops up anytime you want. And we'll see here that you can actually create a history of all the things you've ever asked it conversationally. You can search those things. So, you know, URL short. I had a conversation recently about this. So pretty cool that you can go back and look at the things you've said before. It is powered by ChatGPT 4. You can pay extra for 4, which I do. I think it's better. Adjust creativity. You can add system instructions. Very cool. And recently they've added, you can do web search. So if you want, like they call it RAG. So if you want to be able to supplement information from the web to get certain answers, you can do that. So pretty cool, highly recommended. I have a video talking about Raycast on my YouTube channel, and there are some Raycast Pro referral links. So I'll go ahead and drop that while we're all here talking about Raycast. I do plan on making a Raycast video this year, so look out for that. Okay, so now that we're here, that is a crazy session name. That is definitely an outlier. That's not something that I expected to happen. It is what it is. Maybe something to flag. Okay. Yeah. So What are the other default options? Are there any others that are worth knowing about? Because maybe my thought is below LazyVim, there's a new one called LazyVim reset default all kind of line of code that will reset your entire thing if you want it. Yeah, no, Raycast is really cool. What do I want to do? What is worth exploring here today? So we have my config. Excuse me. Which this isn't real. Can you really go beyond this? So this is all telescope stuff. So it's one of those things that like telescope. I want like telescope. I want the core telescope. Is it even going to be mentioned? Lazy. So we've got a module. We've got some built-ins. We're doing some deep table extending. Let's go. And then we are setting our own mappings. I don't even see the specific mappings here, though. So one of them was, if we go back, one of them was like command history. What is this? This is editor. So editor isn't default key mappings. This is a bunch of other stuff that we didn't ask for that are going to be here anyway. So if I was reading that right, NeoTree as an example is here. Whether you wanted it or not, it's part of what's baked in. So this is editor. I'm kind of curious if editor, this is the distro way, okay? This is just the way that things are right now. All of these things are included. Maybe you do want all these things, maybe you don't. I personally don't like NeoTree, I don't use it. Spectre is one of those things I probably should be using and I don't. And how is it bound? SR. And the way that you define Spectre is you install LazyVim and you learn the binding and you accept the binding, or you do some crazy stuff and you overwrite the binding. That's the way it goes. You can go into every one of these and overwrite everything that you want. So nice. Search. Telescope. Nice. Replace with telescope. Scoope. Nice. Yeah, I think Spectre is worth learning and doing. And that's why YouTube exists, so that I can say, in Vim Spectre, and I learned Spectre, and now that's one thing to check off the list. One thing I thought would be really fun is this idea of like guided learning, where you learn plugins and you turn them on and learn them one by one, and they don't exist until you've opted into knowing what it is. And then you've been given the opportunity to configure it the way that you see fit. It's interesting, right? It's like, well, maybe there's something to that. But there's a lot of cognitive overload every time you come up across every one of these things. And that's kind of the point of a distro, is that you don't have to think about it. Who cares? Are there other search and replace tools? Yes. Do you know if this is the best one? You're maybe assuming so because the person that made this distro picked it, and maybe other distros picked this as well. And so you have to be able to accept that other people have done the research for you in order to be productive. Because if you're on my Discord server, you know that some of us aren't very productive. We are in the researcher stage of things, and we very much are exploratory in our activities, where we're just like, okay, let's explore, like what is there to be done here. And I totally get that, and that's the energy that I like to bring, and it's absolutely the energy we're bringing to today's stream, is talking about this like a lot in depth. So the question is, what does it look like if you were to bring these things in one by one, by choice, and you acknowledge and understand it before you accept that it's in your distro? And your distro is, every time you come up across this stuff, you're going to decide, oh, I don't want it to be vertical. I want it to be its own buffer, or I want it to be a pop-up that overlays Vim. Like, cool, you can do all of that stuff. But you have to know how to do it. You have to learn how to do it. You also have, oh, so they're not building it. You also have to like probably star this and read up on the docs. The one thing I've found is a lot of these Neovim plugins across the board they're all describing what can be done slightly differently, just enough that it's annoying for me. Like, I'm like, we're not all on the same page. There are different plugin managers. There is Vim and Neovim. And so there's definitely a shared language, but it's like there's different dialects. It's like this Vim plugin talks about Vim in this way, and the configuration options are described in this way. Same with like Tmux Vim Navigator. So we love Chris Toomey. Shout out to Chris. Love you, man. Thank you for making this thing. It's very cool. Look, my name, this is me. I'm right here at the very top. So I committed 3 months ago very clear instructions for how to best customize, or how to best do this Vim Tmux Navigator. Like, how do you do this with as little code as possible, but to be as efficient as possible as well? And so I just added a heading and wrote that up and described how to do it. And I tried to do this in lots of places. And unfortunately, Lua, do I have to go on rants? I will. Lua is not a typed language. And what I mean by that, it's like sort of like types were brought in secondhand. And there's a lot of typing that just isn't very consistent or clear. What I mean by that is, like, if I look at the command here, it's a string. Okay, great. Dependencies, it's a table. Okay, great. Keys, same. It's just a table. But if we were to go to something like, I think Capuchin, it's going to be, no, we're in the wrong place. Let's go back to my config. So Capuchin has stronger types. Some of these plugins have stronger types. And if you put in something that doesn't exist, bad equals false, you can see that nothing happens because the typing language doesn't actually tell us when certain things are true or false. It's really annoying, to be honest. As someone who's been writing a lot of Go lately, Go is a strongly typed language, so you get to see, I realize I'm not showing you what I'm showing, but Go is very strongly typed, and so when you put something that may not supposed to be there, Go tells you. In fact, Go doesn't even build. Go will like fail on compile and say, hey, you did a thing you're not supposed to do. Lua doesn't do that very well, but there are certain developers that can go out of their way to improve on that, and some do, but the majority don't, and it's not really clear how to do it. So that's my short rant on Lua. I do like using Lua. I think it's fun and a pretty simple language, but it has been very disappointing at seeing types be not a focus for most people, because I really like types and I think they bring a lot of benefit. And I know that a lot of people probably will disagree and be like, types aren't that important. Like, just get the work done. When you run into an error, you'll fix it. But in the plugin ecosystem, I would argue that strong types would enforce people not hitting their head against the wall because they have one bad line of config and it threw everything off. And you know, maybe you can design your plugin in a way that doesn't happen very much. But as someone who is an open source writer, most of my issues are people not reading instructions. Just to be honest, like I think over half my issues that I see day to day are people just not paying attention, not close enough, or maybe they just don't know. Maybe they just made a mistake, an honest mistake, and they don't know how to fix it. But like, it's in the README already of what's, you know, the right way to do it, or the way that will get you fixed has already been answered. So it's often a little bit frustrating trying to balance that. So I digress. But here we are. We are on our lazy what is happening? I'm not used to this keyboard. Here are our options. We have our color scheme. Key maps and auto commands. The auto commands are cool, but there are quite a few of them. I don't know if you guys have looked at those before. We got news. We got icons, all the icons, very cool. I like these. What is this? Our filters. We got some like utility stuff. Yeah, pretty cool, pretty cool. A little unrelated question here. Recommendations for websites to get templates for documentation or workflows of starting a new project. Yeah, totally. Astro. Not the plugin, but the web framework. I think that this is a really great project for documentation. You can do a lot of markup stuff that is just auto-generated and first party. These integrations are really great. They have, it's not the showcase, is it? Starter templates. They have one specifically called Starlight, and Starlight, can we view it? No. Starlight is a first-party thing made by the Astro team, and it, I'm gonna give it a star, is a documentation site, which gives you documentation in the style of Astro in the way that they do things. but it gives you code snippets and code highlighting, and there's all sorts of cool stuff here. You can see the pagination. You can go to next. You can get overviews. You can search. Let's go to components. Pretty cool search feature. All of this is open source. Very simple to use, very easy to deploy. Your deployment options are super. Let's keep going back. Keep going back. You can deploy to pretty much any system. Deploy your site. All of these places. So I think Astro is really great. If you have React code, you can bring the React code in to the project. I've streamed a lot of Astro content, actually, probably at least a couple dozen hours or more of Astro. So if you feel like going back and watching me do that, I've done a lot of that. And we've got the spicy question. Do I like one-base indexes? Personally, I wish that it wasn't, but it doesn't mean I don't like it. And what I mean by that is, like, I count from 1 as a human, but as a computer, computers count from 0, right? And so I don't know, if someone in the past had decided not to be clever and decided that they could index from 1, I think that might have been a wise choice. But now that we're here decades and decades later, I think Lou is just, deciding that they wanted to do it is, I don't know. Well, I don't know what I want to say about that. It's a choice. It's definitely a choice. It is something that throws me off every now and then. I don't know. Be curious to find out why they did it. I would totally be down to watch a honeypot video or something on the making of Lua, and maybe they could talk about it. So Andres, you say it's logic based. So you think that 0 being the first is more logical, common sense, like human logic, or computer logic? Because no one counts from 0. Literally saying 0 is the first index, you're at odds. First usually is 1. Usually, if you're not a computer person. But computers, I get it. But the whole point of programming languages is that we're humans speaking to a computer via a language, right? So that's the interesting take here, is that whoever did it at first conceptually needed to represent what computers are doing, but it wasn't necessary. You didn't have to choose to start at 0. Did anyone ever do the index +1 thing? I've dealt with that a lot. Yeah, that's been fun. Early on in my career, especially, there were moments where there were index -1 or index +1 or something. I was trying to solve a purpose in making sense of, like, the first thing, the second thing, the third thing, because it was, like, sometimes a little bit odd or hard to decipher. Excuse me. All right, so there's a lot here. And there's a lot to have thought about in the last 90 minutes. Holy smokes. I personally don't love the idea of taking on a lazy Vim, Astro Vim competitor. What's feeling really comfortable right now is, how do I step into any of these communities at a bigger scale and promote making any of this less opinionated, or borrowing from these patterns and simplifying. I think the problem that I found is my custom config feels very simple, and all of these distros feel very complicated. But I recognize that a lot of people are setting up the opportunity to allow for different opinions to be shared at the same time. And that's the power of a custom config, is that if you don't want to do something a certain way, you get rid of the code, and it doesn't live in your code base. And there's no conditional statements, if this thing, then that thing. Like, you don't have to deal with that because there's one way to do it. Disabling the key maps did feel good. The next big thing is basically all of Telescope was decided for you via LazyVim. So my question is, what was that? Let's see. Find files. This guy, editor. So editor is via Telescope doing all of this. We've got help tags and highlights and key maps and man pages and marks. What of importance has been done? Is that really all this is? It's just FCF native, and is it really just FCF native and a bunch of key mappings? No, there's some things here. So we have different actions. Where are these used? Oh, that's cool. Control T, opening with trouble. Alt T, open selection with trouble. I could see this being helpful. Cycling through history. Preview scrolling. So I want to know from chat, when you are dealing with this, let's go up here. I personally don't like leader FF. Basically, this whole approach. Let's just say that I just don't want to do it this way. Do you think I should be the kind of person that just spins up my own config and deal with all the other stuff myself because I've decided to not share the opinions of the people that set up the bindings? Part of me thinks that part of this could be that I disable Telescope. But the way that I've done it in my config, we gotta go back to my config, is that I've just extended it to do more things. And I've overwritten options. Yeah, I get it. So overriding key bindings, yes. And that's what most people do. And that's what the people in my community have been doing, is that we're like, all right, overwrite the keybind, delete the keybind, map something different. Good, we're good. Like, that's it. We've done it. But if you have to do that for everything, it gets tiring because you're doing twice the work. You're undoing the binding that's there and you're adding the binding that you want. The more that I spend time on this, the more it feels like I should just be the guy that makes his own config and makes YouTube videos like Chris, Typecraft, and just, educate people on how to do things by hand if you want to do that by hand. And just be the sort of person that does it the hard way because I want to educate and inform on how the hard way, what happens when you do it the hard way, kind of thing. Excuse me. But at the same time, LSPs suck when it comes to configuring. It's just a lot of hard work in some cases. Well, it doesn't have to be. There are some good plugins out there that make that not always be the case. But really, for you to know something fully, you have to typically be the one that writes the code. In this world, anyway. And you learn a lot by being a distro creator or moderator. You learn way more when you're moderating and maintaining is a better word. When you're maintaining this code, you learn a lot more than if you are just exploring it yourself. Not exploring it yourself, downloading a distro and just using it. Yeah, no, I love Kickstart. That was what drove today's stream. That's why we're talking about this today. By the way, thanks. It seems like a lot of people are sticking around and having this conversation with me, so I really appreciate all the views today. It's been fun. I might take a step back and I may write a custom config myself. Maybe I'll do it via live streams. It seems like a lot of people want to see this. Maybe I will share my learnings and make this just serve as educational purposes for people that want to know, how does all this work? Let's just watch Josh fumble with Neovim, which it's not always fumbling. I do know what I'm doing. So I think there's something to it. I think where it comes together and is really exciting for me is the ways in which my opinions have made things much faster. So as an example, I say that I want to load my project, joshbrodesky.com. Ignoring that error, the dev server automatically starts. The dev server already starts. You guys didn't see it, but it pulled it up automatically. And I have a Vim split right here. This is a split, right? And you'll notice that Vim automatically opened and automatically asked me which file I want to look at. And the files are sorted by most recent use. So these are the files that I've touched most recently. And I use a tool called ZF to match. So if I do comp search, it will match partially on components and it will match partially on search. So it's like a fuzzy search that will prioritize file names. So here, if I do like SCH, we get schema. If we get SRCH, we get search. But you'll notice SRC, is there any other examples? H, if it was fuzzy matching, hero intro might actually be the result. But because search is a bit more looking like this, it's just smarter, if that makes sense. And so I use this a lot in my projects. Same with like fish. If I were to just open up a project anywhere in particular, you'll see that the same thing happens. Vim opens itself up automatically, sorting the files by most recent use, which is a llama thing, is the last thing that I touched today. And then if we look at my sesh project, so kind of combining Neovim and Tmux, my sesh is listed by most recent use and the amount that I use it, so frequency. So this new main is my work project on the main branch, which I touch the most. And dot files is something I touch a lot. And sesh, although I haven't developed much on sesh today, I have this week and it shows up pretty high on the list. And config is something I just recently touched during stream today, and so it made its way up to the top as well. And so combining all of that, I also am able to, let's go back to this. For those that don't know, I use the command key. Let's see, do I have Keycaster here? I do. Let's bring that guy right here. So I use Command G to pull up LazyGit. I hit Command Shift G to pull up my dashboard tooling called GH Dash. I use Command B. Will split and build the project automatically. And if the build is successful and everything is the way that I want it to be, all I have to do is hit Q and that goes away. If I'm not in development mode, I hit Command D and the development mode starts. If I'm inside of Vim, I can hit Command P, which is the VS Code thing, and it pulls up files. And if I hit Command Shift P, it will pull up my recent commands. Or this is like autocomplete commands, basically. And then again, like Command T for new tabs, Command W to close tabs. These are technically Tmux windows. And so that is something that I'm trying really hard at getting people to figure out how to adopt so they're not typing out stuff so much. And it's sort of my intent on trying to figure out how to guide people toward how to set that up. And to me, those things are more beneficial than overriding leader key mappings. You know, it's like, is that as important as saving 2 or 3 seconds every time you do everything on every project all the time? Like, really, there's a huge time loss in a lot of people's workflows, in my opinion, which is why I made a YouTube channel and talk about this stuff. Do I do it eloquently? I don't think I would say yes right now, but I'm learning how to be a bit more eloquent and how to portray this. And so maybe my distro can just be more of like, this is my config and you can fork it. And I really like Astro communities. I think there's something to it. Perhaps there's a way that you can pull in plugins that are going to make you more productive, but you can set the bindings explicitly in the way that you want, making it more simple. I really liked this one thing that we saw. We got a lot of tabs open today. Where was it? This is Astro Vim community. There we go. Yeah. So I really liked this. I thought this was really smart. And so there's probably something to it. I feel like most people that are the most productive and happy with their setup are in that custom config section. And all the work that Typecraft is working on right now, he's sort of in the green section, in my opinion, where he's educating people and offering opportunities to take from his source code and put it in their custom config. So I'll probably play around with like, hey, if you want to add this one line to your lazy Vim config, you can. I might actually do this. This feels a bit counterintuitive to what we've been talking about today, but like, here is a cookbook recipe of how you can create this, floating named, no line number, no indents, no Lua line. Like, how would I go about making the ultra minimalist approach to lazy Vim? That might be a fun experiment. And then people that want to disable or enable certain things can do that. I mean, just a little bit of education on what plugins are being used, you can very easily say, oh, great, cool, I'll use what you're using, and then I'll overwrite this one piece because this is what I want to do. So that's what I'm thinking would be really fun and a simple approach to take my config or take my opinions and overwrite them. But I think the whole key map thing, like telescope, how do you tell? I'm pretty sure when I set up, what is this, file/find, is that something that comes from LazyVim? File find. Yeah, so they've already have this set up. But when I use it, it is all custom because my telescope file in my nvim config, I have keys, and I believe that when these keys are added, it overwrote what was there, I thought. And then I'm also curious, terminal, this guy comes from key maps because my root config, yes, lazy.lua, we learned that we can ops, defaults, key maps. Was it that? Did I just guess randomly and get this right? Defaults, key maps, false. Ops, defaults, key maps, false. Hey, look at that. I have reasonable short-term memory. Oh boy, but it's gonna be mad at something. Oh, weird. So is this trying to load more than it is telling me that I want to load? Default mode. Neovim. Let's go back. Look at that. I just like blew everything up by adding that one line. Lazy file. Lazy 19. Okay, so let's start there. Yeah, interesting. Oh, but this is probably in contrast to import ops. Oh, I did that wrong. That is wrong. All right, my bad. So this needs to be this is all over the place. Oh, because of the config problem. Yeah, it's still weird. Why is it complaining about harpoon? Interesting. Okay. Well, anyway, it'd be interesting to see. Okay, so a lot of this all is going to be just very poorly organized, and that is my bad. So that all needs to go away. But it sure does simplify things. Some of this is telescope, some of this is neoclip, some of this is buffer. These buffer things are me. Package info. Interesting. Git, that's all me. Some of this is LSP. Yeah, so this is a super interesting balance, I guess. There's a lot of knowledge like in my head that I'm like, I don't know how I would expect anyone to know how all this fits together, aside from just becoming a Neovim person and spending a lot of time with this, which I don't really expect people to do. A lot to think on. I'm looking at the time, and I wanted to go 2 hours today, so I think we're gonna stop here in a few minutes. So I will do a couple shout outs and decompress a little, and maybe we take a look back at this guy and we say ideas after live stream 1. All right, so the ideas, all key apps. That people can import if they want. What else? What else are good ideas from this? Explore how to contribute to the we want to contribute more. Probably a YouTube video on Neovim and tell people what certain, all right, I got my telescope, smart search. I got my command guide for file navigation. Yeah, I think you guys are just going to see a lot more content from me on Neovim. It seems to be something a lot of people are interested in right now. Clearly, there's 80 people here. I don't know if I got like someone brought their people in on a stream rate or something. I have no idea. I don't have that set up. But I appreciate all of you being here. There seems to be a lot of attention on distros. People are very curious about what it would take to accomplish something like this. So I think it's merited. I think there's a huge shout out to the big communities that are doing really good work with distros right now. I don't know if I'm capable of taking on a brand new distro on my own. I don't know what value that would bring. So I think it'll be really interesting to bring some opinions and see what happens. If you're not already, please check out our Discord server. We talk about Neovim quite a lot. We talk about tmux and terminals and Mac, and we have some other random conversations that are fun and interesting. So feel free to join. You can find it on my website, joshmedeski.com. My next video on YouTube will be coming out in the next couple weeks. It's about sesh. It'll teach you all about what I was showing off a little bit earlier with switching sessions and opening up Neovim automatically and all of these kinds of clever things that make me much more productive. And so I think the next stream, I will probably take some of my lazy Vim modifications, the ways in which I've made things maybe look differently. I think like a cool like Neovim theme might be fun, where it's like, hey, do all of this, and you can have a very cool experience that's very different from the default lazy Vim. I think that might be fun. We'll see. I do a lot of Golang CLI stuff live right now. I do Astro stuff live right now. And yeah, I really appreciate all of you for being here. And I'm on Twitter day to day, so DM me there if you want to chat about something else. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.